Hello everyone and welcome to Woopercast. This is episode 19 for September the 15th, 2016. As always, I'm your host, Joe Yates. So, today we're going to be talking about Evolutions, the brand new set which is coming out at some point in the future. I think it's going to be like our November set, I guess. I think that's the month when it's coming out at least. But it's all just been revealed in Japanese very recently. Actually, it was just this morning, so I kind of had to change the topic what I was going to talk about on this week's Woopercast. That's partly why there was a slight delay. I'm going to have to change when Woopercast goes up. Not by much. I'm just going to change it from like Thursdays at 5 to Thursdays in the evening at some point, because it's kind of hard for me to tell when I'm actually able to upload these on a consistent basis. So I think it's, as much as I'm a man who believes in the deadline, I'm also a man who has other stuff to do. So I'm going to have to maybe push these back just a little bit later in the evenings. I hope that's not inconvenient for anybody. But I digress, because we're actually going to be talking all about Pokemon cards, which should surprise nobody because that's what we always talk about on this show. So, of course, we're talking about the brand new set, which is Evolutions. It is mostly a throwback to the very first set, to base set. So we've got a lot of reprints and sort of upgrades that these cards have had. This isn't going to be a full set review. It's just going to be my first initial thoughts on it, and really just me being like, I'm just going to go through the cards that I think are good, or the ones that I immediately think have potential. Also, if you hear a low humming in this particular podcast, it is because my cat has decided to join me today. I try and get him to say something, but he'd probably just be angry at me if I poked him. Yeah, he's sitting like next to the computer as I do this, so if you hear a low humming or a scratching noise, that would be him, definitely not me. Anyway, let's move on. So, onto the Evolution set, and the first thing I want to talk about with this one is the cool thing it introduces is Spirit Links to old Megas, or actually the very first Megas that we got, that didn't really see any play like at all initially, because they didn't have Spirit Links, and that made them much harder to pick, and that made them much harder to choose over other Megas, especially as time went on. So now we have Spirit Links for them. The question is, though, does that make them playable, or are these cards still terrible? I believe these cards are still terrible. I don't think they're very good by Mega standards. Mega Charizard, first of all, we have the Mega Charizard Y one, which does 300 damage, but it takes 5 energy. And it does 50 damage to itself in a format where we don't have Protection Cube anymore. Like, you couldn't run it with like Weavile and pick it back up. I don't think that's a huge issue necessarily, but 5 energy is not an easy cost to pay. I suppose you could try it with Clawitzer, where you have like burning energies and double colorless, and you could kind of power it up that way. But if you're doing that, you could try the Dragon Mega one, which does the same amount of damage, but you also get double Dragon energy, which can power it up a little bit quicker than burning energy. And you don't do any damage to yourself, you just discard cards off the top of your deck, and you have easier ways of rectifying that, I suppose. But overall, that sounds really difficult to set up, and really hard. And in a Mega-dominated format, where you're going to be playing against Mega decks that are a lot quicker than you are, like even going up against Mega Scizor, cool, you one-shot it, but at the same time, like, it's going to attack before you, and it's going to remove all your energy off of you. So I feel like that would still be kind of tough to play against. You've also got people countering for Megas, and things like Klefki exist, and I mean, imagine getting 5 energy on your Charizard just for your opponent to slap down a Klefki, and you say, well, you can't do anything now. So yeah, I don't know. I still feel it's still too slow for the game we're in at the moment, and if Steelix isn't going to do well, I can't see these things doing well. Which sounds like I'm kind of dismissing them too quick, but I don't know. I'd be surprised if it happened. Venusaur EX is something I have actually played with before. Alfie, please stop. Venusaur EX is something I have actually played with before. He's now chewing on the wire that connects my headset to the computer, so I'm going to kind of kick him down. Come on. Get off my lap. He doesn't want to go. Okay, so we're going to leave him there for now. Don't chew the wire, though. That'd be great. I'm going to have to cut so much out of this podcast, I swear to God, and it's already late. This is the least professional job I've ever done on this show. But anyway, Venusaur, let's get back on track. I never thought this needed the Spirit Link in the first place. I didn't think it was good, but I didn't think the Spirit Link would help it. My theory behind this one is that whenever I played it a bit like Groudon, where I play it with Vileplume and Forest of Giant Plants. So, okay, that's not like Groudon at all, but I played it in a similar way to Groudon, where I just sort of wall out with something in the active spot. Like I even had Wailords in there at some point. And basically I'd just sort of set up the Venusaur on the bench. I'd have a Vileplume in play to limit my opponent's options. I'd have like crazy stuff like that going on. And then eventually once you did start attacking with the Venusaur, it would be like you had this like monster that is so hard to take down in under item lock. Of course, it didn't really work out that well. I mean, I tried my best, but I just don't think it's an inherently good card, and I think even with the Spirit Link, it's still too slow to set up. I don't know. But hey, it looks cool, and it was quite fun to play. Blastoise maybe has some potential. This did actually get played a little bit in Archie's Blastoise lists, I saw, as a counter to Leafeon. This is ages ago. Because Leafeon couldn't knock it out in one hit and you could return a KO on it. This was really stupid, but people did do it. Few people, but they did do it, and it worked to a certain extent. So even when it did see play, it wasn't with the regular Blastoise, and then you didn't need the Spirit Link. But of course, Archie engines are less likely nowadays because thanks Battle Compressor for leaving the format. But I don't know. I mean, I think Waterbox is now looking for a new main attacker now that Toad is gone. And if you want to go that way, I mean, people are already trying this out with Primal Kyogre. Maybe you want something a little more different to that. You've got Blastoise. It does 120 and 30 to 2 things on the bench, which is alright, actually. I mean, it's not that bad. It's not the best you'll ever see on a Mega, but it could be worse. That's all I'm saying. And my computer is frozen. Nothing wants me to actually make this podcast today, I swear to God. I'm going to have to double check all of that. Yeah, that was that. Okay. Thank you so much to every force of the universe that is willing me not to make this episode. So, anyway, I'm going to move on from the Megas. I think they're cool. I think if any of them are going to see play, it's going to be Blastoise. I don't think the regular Blastoise is much cop. It's strictly inferior to the other Blastoise. It doesn't offer anything that their other Blastoise doesn't offer itself. So that's why I'm going to have to say I'm passing on all those still. Anyway, so onto the main cards themselves, the other ones from the set. First one I'm going to talk about is Charizard, the regular one. Now, I said I would mention the good ones. I'm not considering this good, but like the things you can play this with are crazy. So for 4 fire energy, it does 200 damage and discard 3 energy attached to it, right? But it has the ability Energy Burn, so all cards attached to it, or all energy attached to it, count as fire energy. This means Double Colorless will count as 2 fire energy. But it also means you can play it with Bronzong, and then just discard the metal, and then you can reattach it again. You could play it with like Magnezone or Blastoise, and water or fire will still count as that energy type, and you can still go from there. As much as I still think it's way too slow, and that you'd probably end up playing it in Expanded, that's still really cool, isn't it? I mean, that sounds great, and someone's going to make a fun deck out of that at the very least. Okay, onto the other one is Arcanine BREAK. Not going to be covering all the breaks, because things like Nidoking BREAK is just not good at all. Arcanine BREAK's interesting because I'm not sure if that's even part of this set or if it's coming a bit later, but the funny thing about Arcanine BREAK is that it's like a spiritual successor to Mega Manectric. And of course we had a lot of people who enjoyed playing Mega Manectric, and so obviously those people are probably going to try and play this guy in some sort of capacity. I kind of like it. I mean, I think it's a bit slow though. It's a lot slower than Mega Manectric was, and the other issue I see with it is that it's a little less splashable than Mega Manectric was. I mean, without Battle Compressor, I think getting the energy in the discard pile in the first place is going to be a bit difficult. On top of that, though, like regular Manectric could still put in the work. I don't think regular Arcanine can still put in the work, and I think that's sort of an issue for it. So even when you are going to be a bit slow to set up, you're still not going to be really doing anything with your turns, and I think that's going to hold it back. It's going to be nowhere near as good as Mega Manectric was, but you know what? The attack is still good. The attack is still fine. So I don't think we can write it off just yet. Starmie is another interesting one. I quite like this. Okay, now you're getting down. See ya. Okay, Starmie is another interesting one. My reason for this thing being that we're sort of seeing energy retrieval pop up as a thing in Volcanion. This is the first synergy that came to my mind anyway. It was like Volcanion could get it back. So Volcanion also counts as a water type, and you could cut like all of the energy retrievals from your list and run Dive Balls and a Starmie line, like a 2/2 Starmie line. And then eventually you've got like, so instead of playing energy retrieval, you can just play Starmie to get your energy back that way instead, which is kind of cool. I mean, I'm not sure, like there's no issue with the energy retrieval version or the Fisherman version and stuff like that, so I don't feel like it's one of those if it ain't broke, don't fix it kind of things, but the option exists. The other thing I thought of for this thing was kind of Vileplume. I'm covering a lot of Vileplume on my channel over the last couple of days, so you'll probably, I mean, I'm going to reference Vileplume a couple more times in this because the few cards I think help it out a bit, but like in Vileplume, it's hard to get your resources back from the discard pile, so any little helps. and being able to get back energy like that could be super cool. I'm also going to double check that it's just basic energy, because if it's special energy, this changes everything. Where are we now? Basic energy cards. I'm very glad it's basic energy cards, because I think regular energy cards would be crazy stupid. The other cool thing about it is it has a break, which I quite like. So the break for 1 water energy, I believe it is it 1 water energy? Yeah, it's 1 water energy. Turbo Star does 100 damage to each of your opponent's break Pokemon in play, like all of them at once. You potentially do about 200 damage for a single energy. Not bad. Really not bad at all. That's quite a lot of damage for a single basic energy. I don't know how practical it is though, because only hitting breaks is a bit limited. Your opponents will, like, at most have 1 breakout, if any, and usually that break itself is going to have more than 100 HP. I actually don't think there is a single break that has less than 100 HP. Correct me if I'm wrong on that one, but the biggest sort of one that I saw this being decent against was actually Greninja. So think about it. You've got 130 HP on Starmie break, and if your opponent has like 2 Greninja breaks in play, you come up, you play Hex Maniac and you Turbo Star, you do 100 to both the Greninja breaks. Then your opponent uses Rough Seas, they heal down to 70. They can't kill you because you Hex Maniac'd. And then you just Turbo Star again, and you've knocked out 2 Greninja breaks in 1 turn. That's pretty sweet. I mean, if you're really worried about it, there you go, that's a solution. And hey, Greninja is something that I suppose Volcanion could struggle with a bit. So tech in like 1 water energy and then you're ready to go. That's a really weird idea that, I don't know, it could come to something, it could not. Magikarp. Yeah, I'm going to cover Magikarp, because it has this attack that does 10 damage times the number of damage counters on it. We all know that there is a Magikarp, that is our Gyarados, I'm sorry. I cannot remember which set it came out in, but it has an ancient trait, which says that it does damage based on the amount of damage that is on your Magikarps on the bench. And that's cool and all, it adds up quite heavily, but this could... I feel like if you're running that deck, you should now run this Magikarp. It just makes a lot more sense. And also, you can now run Shrine of Memories, so the Gyarados can take a lot of hits, and then the Magikarp, you can retaliate with that. Mew can copy this attack if you want slightly more damage. I mean, these are all horrible ideas, but it's a very slight improvement for anyone who was playing Ancient Trait Gyarados, which is probably about like 3 people. But there you go. Electrode is another one. I think this is one for the future. I think it's, at the moment, I'm going to consider it a little bit outclassed by Magnezone. My reason for saying this is that, like, Magnezone can attach as much... Actually, I should really explain what Electrode does first. That would be really helpful, wouldn't it? You can discard it, and you can attach it to one of your lightning Pokemon. It counts as a special energy, and it provides 2 lightning energy. So, there's a few issues with this. First of all, it is, you knock it out, which means that your opponent takes a prize card. Now, cards have knocked themselves out before. Cofagrigus and Milotic in recent memory. Cofagrigus was played a bit in Flareon, like, briefly. It wasn't even that good when it was played. Milotic saw like little to no play. I played them a bit. Anyone who played Lucario from like Plasma Blast will know this, because it did damage based on the amount of prize cards your opponent had taken. So you could use like Milotic and Cofagrigus to add damage, get energy on the board, and stuff like that. So that was pretty fun, but we don't really have anything like that in the format at the moment. There is there's Cobalion, which does damage based on the amount of prize cards your opponent's taken, but Electrode doesn't actually benefit Cobalion in any way. In Expanded, there's a Luxio, which does damage based on the prize cards your opponent has taken. That is a lightning Pokemon, that does take lightning energy, but Milotic already fulfills that role, and nobody plays it because it sucks. So I don't really see why this would be used over Magnezone. If this was a different type, like, I know it's Electrode, why would it be a different type? But, like, let's just say, for example, it was a grass type or something. Like, there are plenty of other types that would have appreciated the energy acceleration that this thing offers. I feel like Thunder already has its options there. So yeah, I don't know, maybe one for the future. Maybe something that doesn't have the room for Magnezone. But ultimately, I think people will just find the Magnezone is better. Especially as well because Electrode's a special energy. So you're now weak to like Enhanced Armor, you're weak to Giratina. I suppose you're not weak to Giratina because you attach from the bench, not from the hand. But you're also weak to things like Enhanced Armor, you're weak to Assault Vest. Magnezone's just basic energy, so you're good to go. Yeah, I don't know. I can't see this one seeing much play. At least not immediately. The next one is going to be Mewtwo. Like I said, I'm really just kind of skimming through this because I don't want to go through all the cards. I'm going to save that for the set review. I don't want to go into super details here because there's a lot of stuff that isn't that great in this set. And I'm only picking out the ones that I think are actually like super good. Or super interesting or worth talking about at least. Anyway, Mewtwo has this attack for 2 colorless energy. It does 20 damage plus 20 more for each energy attached to your opponent's active Pokemon. People are considering this to be a counter to Mega Mewtwo. I don't think it necessarily is, or at least it isn't in every single deck. Like, so think about it. Your opponent has a Mega Mewtwo. They have, let's say, what, like 4 energy attached to it at most, which is 2 Psychics and a double colorless. That's 20, 40, 60, 80. That's 80. Plus your base 20 is 100. Doubled is 200. I mean, that doesn't get the KO, which is quite crucial. You need a Fighting Fury belt on the Mewtwo in order to get the KO for that. And this kind of creates some problems, because now it means that this Mewtwo can only be played as a counter in decks that run both double colorless energy and Fighting Fury belt. And if you don't run one of those things, you can't use this guy as a counter for Mega Mewtwo, because he's not going to be getting the one-hit KO. And well, really, if you're not getting the one-hit KO on Mewtwo, your counter's doing a pretty terrible job. So I don't know. I don't think the math works out that great for all decks. I think for some decks it does. I think maybe Volcanion could use this, because I know Volcanion does struggle a little bit with Mega Mewtwo. You'd have to even then manually attach, like, I suppose you could power it up with the baby Volcanion, so it's not too bad. I think maybe it could fix that a little bit. The other thing you could use then is like Mew EX or just regular Mew to get it, but then you have to put 3 energy on that, so this will save you an attachment. I don't know. I think it's not that bad, and it will help against your Mega Mewtwo matchups in a couple of different things. I just don't think every deck is going to be able to run it. Especially when, like, you know, Mew EX is coming out, which basically means that every deck has a little easier counter. The difference between this Mewtwo and Mew EX is that this Mewtwo isn't weak to Garbodor or Hexmaniac or anything that Mega Mewtwo players tend to run, so I guess it's, on paper, for a couple of decks, it'll work out as better, but I wouldn't be immediately jumping to it if your deck happens to be weak to Mega Mewtwo. The other one is the actual Mewtwo EX from this set. I'm not a huge fan of this one. I'll read the attacks very briefly. Let's see. I don't want to scroll too much because my browser is screwing me up today, and every time I seem to scroll on the page, it seems to just crash for some reason. I'm not sure why. I need to look into that. It seems to be a callback to the proper, like, promo and base set Mewtwo's. So for 1 colorless energy, it does no damage, but you attach an energy from your discard pile to this Pokemon. For 1 psychic energy, you heal 60 from it. And for a psychic and 3 colorless, you do 110. I don't see why this is better than the other Mewtwo's that exist. Like, we know how good the damage change one is. I feel like the only reason you wouldn't run a damage change Mewtwo is in Mewtwo itself. Is if you were worried about the mirror match. So, like, and I mean, would you be? I don't see how this would help you out in the mirror match. The heal 60 damage is fine, but Pokemon Center Lady, which you should be running anyway, already provides that. The attack is fine, but Shatter Shot can essentially do the exact same thing for you. Yeah, I can't really see this one being used over the other Mewtwo's that we have, and even in Expanded, of course, we have the X-Ball one, which we all know how good that is. The only thing I'm thinking of is if you're running like a more offensive Mewtwo with, like, you're not using the damage change, you're using the other Mewtwo, whatever its attack is. It's like a double colorless and you do 30 and then you prevent 20 or 30 done to you next turn. Like, if you're running a more offensive variant with just a lot of Max Elixirs, Mega Turbos, secondary attackers, that kind of stuff, which isn't that bad of a deck. I think people are kind of skipping over it. It's actually not that bad of a deck at all. It's pretty cool. I think one of these guys might not be bad, because energy absorption, you can use it to like attach an energy. You could use energy absorption to attach a double colorless from your discard pile straight to this Mewtwo, and then when you Mega Evolve it, you do more damage. So I don't know. It might be a nice option if that's a deck you're considering running. But that's really the only use I can see for it right now. Anyway, Mew. Just to mention the ability, it's a 40 HP basic. Prevent all effective attacks done to this Pokemon by Evolved Pokemon. But the attack sucks. It's 30 and paralysis on a coin flip. Yeah, the ability is nice. I don't think... I mean, it'll screw over Mega Pokemon, I guess, but the attack's just not very good. And really, I don't see how this ability works at all with the attack. I don't know. I can't see it seeing any play, but it's kind of a shame because it's a bit of a wasted potential with that an ability that good. Like, even in the current meta, that's pretty good because you're still forcing your opponent to play around it, but I can't see it seeing any play, like, at all. So I wouldn't worry about that one too much. Let's see what else we got on this list. Okay, so onto the colorless types. I'm skipping over all the fighting types because I didn't think there were any good ones. And my computer has frozen again. Please, God, tell me I don't have to reset this podcast. Oh, wait. And we're back. Okay, we're good. Okay, yeah, I'm going to have to double check all this stuff, man. This is a really rough podcast this week, I swear to God. Anyway, let's just move on to the colorless Pokemon. We got Pidgeot, who is, I don't know, Pidgeot and Mega Pidgeot for me are like, I think there's some potential there. I know that sounds stupid. I think people have looked at it and thought, oh, well, that's crap. The reason I think there's potential there is because Pidgeot is colorless. And as we saw with Mega Audino, you can play this with a ton of different things in a ton of different ways. The attack is nowhere near as strong as Magical Symphony, I don't believe anyway. So Pidgeot itself does, like, for a single colorless energy, you can do Mimic, which means whatever attack your opponent did to Pidgeot last turn, you do that same amount of damage back to your opponent. The issue with this is, it's not if your opponent did damage last turn, your opponent had to do the damage to Pidgeot. So you can't just send up like a non-EX, let it tank a massive hit, and then go into the Pidgeot and use Mimic. It has to be on the Pidgeot. So that really limits what you can do with Mimic. Second attack is 3 colorless, it does 80 and 20 to the bench. Initially I thought this was 2 colorless, and I was like, yeah, I'll play this with Crobat and expanded, because that'll be cool. 3 colorless makes this a lot more difficult to play. So, I mean, it's still not a bad attack. Like, 80 and 20 snipes okay on something that's not even your final evolution. That's alright. The Mega Pidgeot then has an attack which does 3 colorless, 130, and you may or may not have your opponent switch their active with one of their benched. Your opponent gets to choose, of course. I feel like this could be really awkward to play around, though. Like, you could really screw over your opponent a bit with this. Especially if you're trying to, like, play it with stuff with, like, I don't know, Aqua Base or something like that, so like you make your opponent promote something that they can't retreat. I can't think of any super good ideas for Pidgeot off the top of my head, but the important thing to remember is that it synergizes with literally everything, because you can play whatever types you want on top of this. You can play it with Magearna, you can play it with Manaphy, you can play it with plenty of other things. I don't know. I think it's worth knowing because of the amount of potential partners that could be made for it. So that's why I'm still kind of mentioning it, and I think it's worth that we bear this one in mind at least. The other colorless EX is sick. Absolutely sick. Dragonite EX. Everyone buy this as soon as it comes out, because this thing is godlike. Buy 2 of them, actually. Man, I am so hyped for this card, and I know tons of you guys are too. Jesus. Okay, so the ability, who cares about the attack? The ability is when you bench it, you get to take 2 Pokemon for your discard pile and put them in your hand. Mega Gardevoir is going to love this thing. Mega Rayquaza is going to love this thing. Can you imagine? You just like Dragonite for a Hoopa or 2 Hoopa and you're back in the game. That's so good. Yeah, I think I've been playing a lot of Mega Gardevoir. I do kind of want to do a deck analysis of it, but I don't have the cards on PTCGO and all this stuff like that. I'm still kind of working on the list and trying to figure out what is best for it. So that might come later. I'm not sure. I'm not too sure right now, but man, my Dragonite will help it out so much. It's not even just terms of damage output. It's just like it gets you back in the game instantly. Yeah, you're weak to silent. It's a little weak to Silent Lap, but like as a drawback, if that's your only drawback, that's fine by me. I can see it working in Mega Gardevoir the most because, you know, you bench it, you take the 2 Pokemon from your discard pile, and then, okay, I'll just discard the Dragonite. It doesn't matter. I think there is a stipulation on the text that says Dragonite cannot take another Dragonite, so you can't just chain them like that, unfortunately, but that's fair enough. It's still an amazing card. That ability is just fantastic. You're going to want to be picking these up. It's probably going to be the most expensive card out of all these guys, apart from like the Megas. Apart from like Mega Charizard, that's always expensive. But yeah, I'm going to be picking these guys up as soon as I can. Rattata. Oh man, I'm so glad that I can mention Rattata as a playable Pokemon. For those of you who don't know, Rattata and Raticate are my favorite Pokemon, aside from Wooper. Like, I know Wooper is the name of the channel, but I'm a huge Rattata and Raticate fan. Easily my favorite Pokemon, always has been. And now we have a playable one. We haven't had a playable one since like Team Rocket, the original one. It let you like switch prize cards with the top card of your deck. That was pretty cool. But this one, when you bench it, You discard a tool card, or all tool cards actually. So screw you, Ancient Trait Pokemon. All tool cards attached to your opponent's active. So goodbye, Klefki. This is straight going in Gardevoir as well. This is going in Mega Ray as well. Mega Ray will love this. Goodbye, Klefki. Goodbye, Assault Vest. Goodbye, Bursting Balloon. Goodbye, Spirit Links really early on in the game, you know. I think we've gotten a bit lax with our tool attachments. Like, I know myself, like if I'm playing a Mega Deck, as soon as I have a Spirit Link, it goes straight down. Because I don't see, like, there's no risk anymore. It's not like it's going to be taken off me or anything like that. Oh man, we needed some kind of tool discard in the format, but we also didn't need... I would have hated a Megaphone reprint. I kind of like that there's nothing that powerful available to us again. Rattata is like perfect. You know, it takes up event space, there's a lot of drawbacks. It's weak to ability lock, won't help with Garbodor, but it does just enough, and it's going to find a space in a couple of different decks. Yeah, buy 4 of these. You're probably going to want them. Raticate also has a good attack. It does... You know what? I'm going to pop it up here, because it has 2 good attacks. We're frozen again. This is... God damn it, no. Alright, you're going to need to give me like 2 seconds here. Yeah, we're back. Okay. So, Crunch for 10 damage. These are both attacks. First of all, 60 HP. That is terrible on a stage 1. I'm fully aware. But don't forget, there is a Raticate break, which bumps it up to like 110, which is pretty sweet. Raticate, so for 1 colorless energy, does Crunch, 10 damage. Discard an energy attached to your opponent's active Pokemon. No coin flips. They don't have to be EX Pokemon. You just discard an energy attached to them. How cool is that? That's so good. And on top of that, you have Bite from the Shadows for 60 damage. Does 60 damage times the number of special energy cards in your opponent's discard pile. So, I mean, like, you can sort of build up with Crunch. Enhanced Hammer is still in the format. It's not going to work against every deck, because some decks don't play special energy, granted. Even if you can't Bite from the Shadows, Break Evolve it, and use that attack, and then finish it off with a Crunch if you want to. I'm really excited about this guy. Like, that's a really good attack. That could absolutely screw with some people. Yes, it's got low HP, but it's super splashable. Like, it's just 1 colorless energy. There's so many good things about this guy. Only a 1 retreat cost as well, so it's not that hard to play. Even the basic it evolves from is good. You've got a lot of things going for you with this Raticate. I'm so excited that we finally have a good Raticate. It's made my day. It's made my year, in fact. I'm very happy about all this. Anyway, what else we got? Okay, Porygon. I know probably you may have seen Porygon, and you may have thought, well, why would I want to play that? I think this thing is kind of interesting, though. Since Ranger got printed, it's making me think a bit less about it and think, like, it limits its values, especially against a deck like Volcanion, where hitting that for weakness will just win you a game. But obviously they play multiple copies of Ranger, so that becomes more difficult. But I still really like this thing. So what you do is, it's a single colorless energy, and you change your opponent's weakness until the end of your next turn to whatever you want, except colorless. Yes, that was my cat. It says you can't pick colorless as one of your options, which is kind of interesting. Oh, will you please shut up? I'll talk to you in a minute, okay? I'm trying to talk about Porygon here. Anyway, yeah, I like it. I think, let's think about Mega Mewtwo, right? Like, I know your opponent can switch out of it. I know your opponent can Ranger out of it. I know there are ways to get around Porygon, but you're still forcing your opponent to find a way to do that, and all you're doing is using a basic non-EX for a single colorless energy. I think that's super splashable. I think that's super cool. Especially in, like, again, in Vileplume, where your opponent doesn't have those switching options. You could wreck with people with this. I've actually started putting Mew in a couple of my Vileplume lists to be more flexible about the attacks I pick. And this thing would be so good for that. I could just pick... I could use Mew to pick the Psychic weakness, and then the very next turn, I could use Mew to pick any other attack and follow up with it. Yeah, I think this thing is really cool. I'm going to try it. I'm going to give it a shot. I just think in concept it's quite nice. It might work better in theory than on paper, but I think it's still worth paying attention to. Okay, so onto the trainers. Oak's Hint. I don't know why anyone would play this nowadays. Like, Tropical Beach was cool because it was also a counter stadium. It didn't take up your supporter for the turn. Oak's Hint is a supporter that does the same thing as Tropical Beach. So you draw until you have 7 and then you end your turn. Like, I don't really see the point of this. I mean, it feels strictly worse than Tropical Beach, so it's worse than Expanded. Unless you're essentially, like, I don't know, you really want to run Tropical Beach, but you can't afford it, which is perfectly acceptable because that thing's pretty expensive. I really can't see where this fits in. If anyone finds a use for this or has thought of any possible way to use Oak's Hint, please let me know. I want to talk about the Misty full art. Let's all talk about the Misty and Brock full arts, can we? These cards are so clean. They just look fantastic. There's like no messiness. There's like, it's just the picture, the like, what do you say it? The template, that's the word I'm looking for. The template for the card where you got like the trainer, the text, it all just fits so well. It looks amazing. Oh man, I'm going to be picking up a good few of these. Yeah, even though, like, I mean, Misty is still a good card. I still like it in a few different decks, but now it looks even better when you play it. But the other card, they got a full art. And the final card I want to talk about, and something I'm very excited for, is Brock's Guts. I'm not sure if we're going to keep the name Brock's Guts. Brock's Determination would make more sense to me, so it would sort of link up with the Misty card, but whatever the name ends up being, I think the card's really cool. So it's a supporter, you play it, you shuffle 6 in any combination of Pokemon and basic energy into your deck. This is awesome. It's like 2 super rods at once. Why is it awesome? Well, 6 is a way bigger number than 3. So Mega Rayquaza could use this. I suppose it would rather Karen, though. I'm thinking about this in Gardevoir because Super Rod's fine and everything, but I still want to shuffle in like a decent amount of Pokemon back into the deck. So I think it will work a lot better there. Also, Vileplume. You can't run Super Rod and Vileplume because it doesn't work, and you don't really have cards that access your discard pile without sacrificing your attack for the turn on Bunnelby. So Brock is like a Super Rod that you can play with Vileplume. I don't know. I think like this card is definitely going to find a place in the format. And in a weird way, it might make Vespiquen better. Alright, hear me out on this really long train of thought. So, if you think about it, Karen's coming out. So we're all afraid that, like, okay, that means the people play Karen, Vespiquen becomes completely irrelevant. No one's going to want to play it anymore because, obviously, it limits all your damage output. But now Brock's coming out. And will a lot of decks look at this and think, you know what, most of the time, I'm only going to want to shovel back in, like, 5 Pokemon. Outside of Mega Rayquaza, there aren't a whole lot of decks that actually want to shuffle in more than 6 Pokemon, in which case Brock becomes strictly better to play than Karen. So does that mean that these decks will then start playing Brock over Karen, and in turn, not play Karen, not shuffle in your discard pile, and that allows Vespiquen to sort of come back into the format a bit? I don't know, I'm clinging on to a bit of hope here. Of course, if Vespiquen ever did get big, people just run one Karen and then they beat it, which sucks, but I don't know, it's a little bit of hope. It's a little bit of hope. There's quite a few things that you can read into with Brock. I really like it. It's probably one of my favorite cards that I've seen from this set. And the artwork is fantastic, isn't it? I mean, everyone wants Brock. Everyone loved Brock in the anime. That frying pan, drying pan line will go down in history as one of the most memorable quotes from the anime. Let's not even beat around the bush here. Everyone loves Brock. And now everyone's going to love his card too, because it's actually fantastic. And I can see this seeing a lot of play. Anyway, those are going to be my thoughts on the highlights, or at least the more interesting picks of the new set coming out. I thought this would be a fun one to do. We are getting a Caterpie reprint as well. It's exactly the same as the Caterpie from base set, so anyone watching my Let's Play of the Pokemon Trading Card game on Game Boy Color, you'll all know how completely broken that card is, obviously. Anyway, I think that's going to wrap it up for this week. Thank you so much for watching. We'll be back Thursday evenings. I'm not going to say 5 p.m. anymore, because I want to promise you I can get it at 5 p.m., but I really do have other stuff to do. Thursdays, though, Thursday evenings, at some point, it's grand. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. You find us on facebook.com/Woopercast, soundcloud.com/Woopercast, also on TuneIn and Stitcher. Links in the description below for all of that. Thanks again for watching, and I will see you next time.